Welcome to the Healing Grove podcast. I'm Dr. Kristin, an integrative holistic family physician, author of Life After Lyme, and host in this virtual space of learning, healing, and growing. I believe humans are like trees, and our physical limb is only one of many. Health on all limbs of the tree, emotional, conceptual, social, spiritual, is absolutely required for the whole tree that is you to be vibrantly well. I created the Healing Grove podcast as a place to showcase some of the world's best integrative and holistic medicine, to expose you to transformative tools and mindset shifts for all limbs of your tree. I hope you enjoy our conversation in the Healing Grove today as much as I enjoyed having it. Welcome everyone to the Healing Grove. This week we have a wonderful guest in the nest, and that's my friend Sheetal Contractor. Sheetal, I was thinking as I was preparing for this conversation about how we met, and you're going to have to fill in some blanks for me. It was like such a crazy year. We were trying to build a wellness center at Trout Creek, and Sarah was living there. I feel like maybe she got you to come start teaching yoga. Do you remember how that happened?
It's so funny that you ask this, because I was just talking to Jerry about this because she asked the same thing. And at first I wasn't remembering, and then it suddenly came to me that we have a mutual friend in Beth Wernham. And
Okay.
I remember Beth mentioning you at some point. It might have been during a women's group that we were involved in. And I was like, oh, this sounds like someone I should know, like I need to meet. And then I think I reached out to you, and maybe even just had a consultation or something. And then it was at Trout Creek, because you were just starting to establish Trout Creek. And we got to talking, and, basically I started offering my healing bodywork there on certain days and doing some workshops there. And Sarah was living there. We got to do a bunch of things together I was doing stuff for a while, for a year or two, I think. Yeah. So that's how it began.
It's all piecing together now that you're mentioning that. So yeah, it was from Beth. We did like a barter. I think we did like my consultation for your amazing, I think I had a Mother's Day massage from you, which was like life-changing.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm a person who really likes a heavy, deep massage, and yours was both the very lightest touch and the most profound thing that's ever happened to me in massage. It was incredible. So I've been sending you people ever since. And last year I worked with you quite a bit doing some of a newer massage that you are doing now, which maybe you'll talk about. But anyway, it's been an interesting patchwork of how we've sort of interfaced. And every time I'm just in your presence, I'm just so in awe of how, actually Sarah was the one who said this first. She said, Sheetal should do more here. She really embodies what she does.
That's so sweet. That's so sweet. Thank you for saying that.
It's accurate. It's really the truth. You really are who you say you are, and you really walk your talk. And you've written a book this year, and you're doing a lot of interesting things to promote wellness. And I just wanted to have you meet this audience and share some tools. So thank you so much for agreeing to be here.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for inviting me. I love sharing with all communities. And so I'm so happy and honored to be part of your community today as well.
Cool. Well, why don't you start by you telling us a little bit about yourself and what put you on this path that you're on, what you do, and then we'll get into some of the tools.
Absolutely. Sure. So let's see. I started, it's funny because my path is the path of yoga. Yoga is one of my key offerings. It's what I do as a lifestyle practice. And I have been doing some form of yoga, mainly most people are familiar with the poses and things like that, ever since I was a child. But it wasn't until later in my mid to late 20s that I really started understanding the power of yoga, and along with the body work that I started becoming more familiar with. And so to back up a little bit, when I was younger, I was in the corporate world. When I first graduated from college, I was in the corporate world for many years. And I just one life challenge after another. And I think, your community can understand that and relate to that, how I think many of us can relate to that, how we deal with various life challenges. And for me, they just started accumulating mainly in my early 20s into my late 20s. And I got to a point by the end of my 20s where I had gone through various personal challenges with family. I had gone through my first separation with my first husband at that point. I was dissatisfied professionally in the corporate world where I was working, and it all just came to a head. And it was at that point that I discovered yoga from a completely different perspective, and that was more from its philosophical, spiritual perspective. And those teachings are actually what yoga is really about. Like if you think about an iceberg, and what most people think of yoga with the poses and the movements and stuff like that, that's just like the tip of the iceberg. And most of it's underwater that you can't see. So that's what really started my own personal healing journey. And not only did it start my personal healing journey, but it's what caused me to basically take a leap of faith and say, I'm leaving, and said bye-bye to the corporate world. And just kind of embarked on a different path altogether, personally, professionally, kind of everything.
Wow. Well, I know a lot of people in their lifetimes, I feel, are called to make a leap of faith like that at one point or another. Perhaps just by the nature of the work I do, I hear a lot of those stories of people who have had a physical illness, that has been a spiritual 2x4 and has caused them to have to reevaluate and do something different. What was it for you, or was it just kind of a slow dawning that this was the path you needed to be on?
Yeah, that's a great point. And you're right. I think I'm a little bit different in that sense because I've been blessed with pretty good physical health. But for me, it was more the emotional well-being. And so, as I mentioned, there was just an accumulation of things that I experienced, various life challenges that I experienced that brought me to that point. That was that proverbial 2x4 that just hit me on the head and said, you are not well. Like I was not well. I was not feeling well at all. And what it was really was I wasn't feeling whole. I didn't feel whole at all. I didn't know who I was, and I didn't have a sense of my wholeness. And it was right around that time that I also read, have you heard of Kitchen Table Wisdom by Rachel Noemi Bremen? I think many of you may have read her. I just loved that book, and it spoke to me so profoundly. And she equates wholeness with healing. And that just made so much sense to me. And I realized that I was in need of healing because I did not feel whole. And lucky for me, I totally believe in divine timing, and the universe provides when you need it, when you need the most. And I was introduced to a spiritual teacher, from a yogic background, that I was able to then learn from, to be able to kind of, again, make this major life change and shift, and start that new process, or that new path.
Wow. Well, I also want to hear more about why you were doing poses as a child.
It was, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was like I did gymnastics a little bit when I was a little kid. And maybe, I was just always interested in moving and movement with my body and working with my body. And I realized later that I had been doing like yoga poses when I was, 5, 6, 7, 8, not even really knowing that I was doing yoga poses. And I think at some point in my tweens, I was gifted a yoga book. And so I started just self-teaching myself at an early age, different types of yoga poses, and it's a little bit of breath work and stuff like that. And I just had fun with it. I thought it was fun. To me, it was fun, creating these different shapes with my body and stuff like that. And I don't know, there's another it's a photo book actually. It's called Born Yogis. Have you ever seen or heard of that? And maybe someone in your community may have seen that. It's a picture book of basically babies and toddlers. So there's babies ranging up to, like, the oldest child in the book is maybe 5 or 6. And it's just random pictures of them at play. And how these various poses that they're doing, or these different things that they're doing, are basically like yoga poses. And so they assign the name, they say, oh, well, look at this. And this is just like, happy baby, or this is like child pose, or this is like this pose, or whatever.
I can picture it. Page 1, happy baby. Page 2, another happy baby. Page 3, happy. Very cool. So this embodiment from an early age, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, I'm really curious to hear you say a little bit more about what's under the surface in this iceberg scenario of yoga, because I know a lot of people have gotten into yoga in the last, 4 decades, but particularly I think since in the last couple of years, a lot of people are turning to that as something that they can do at home. And I want to know, and I think people begin to sort of appreciate what's underneath the tip of the iceberg if their practice is long enough and they're present enough for it. They're not just taking selfies of themselves while they're striking a pose. But I wonder if you could speak to some of those lessons learned beneath the surface.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so I don't need to speak about the whole holistic approach with this group, the mind, body, spirit connection, which of course yoga is based on. And so the teachings speak of the human being in terms of these 3 bodies, right? Our physical body, the subtle body, and the causal body, which is basically the same as that body, mind, spirit. Those 3 bodies equate to that. And then the subtle body actually is broken down in the yogic teachings into 3 further aspects: the energetic vibrational aspect of the human being, the mental emotional aspect of the human being, and then the intellectual intuitive aspect of the human being. And so that subtle body aspect of who we are as human beings, I feel, is what predominantly is the under the water part. And of course the causal body, or that spirit body, of course, as well. We don't see that addressed or worked with as much in Western yoga. And I think that it makes sense because most people aren't familiar or aware of that in one case. And in the other case, it's that they're not necessarily ready for it. And so studios mainly are focused in more of the fitness or even just relaxation. Those kinds of perspectives are what are offered when yoga is presented most of the time in studios and gyms and fitness centers and stuff like that. And not to diminish it, there's great benefit to be received from that part of yoga as well. But as you mentioned, what people will find if they stay with the practice, even the physical practice, more and more, is that there's so much more going on, and how that can then lead to further wellness in the subtle body, in that energetic piece, in that mental emotional piece, and in that intuitive piece. So for example, there's a whole body of teachings on the philosophy of yoga, where there are various, I want to call them steps, but they're not really steps, but there's principles. There's various principles that yoga offers on how to live a fulfilling and meaningful life with others. Right. So those are called the yamas and the niyamas, and so these are principles of how do I best deal with the world, and how do I best deal with my own self and the relationship with myself, and then how do I best deal with the relationship with the external world. So those types of teachings, most people don't even realize that yoga has teachings like that to offer, that help us to understand ourselves more thoroughly. Then, of course, there's the breath work, which, of course, most people, if you've done any yoga, that breathing is an important part of it. But there's so many specific types of breathing practices you can do that can really help you create like purification in the body, and that can help you achieve not only relaxation and calm and ease, but then also uplift your energy and invigorate, and things like that. So there's, that aspect. And then there's the kind of the mindfulness aspect, the intuitive piece, where there are ways and things you can practice that help us to just be more aware of ourselves in terms of our patterns, our tendencies, and then, course correct, create a shift in the way that we think, create a shift in the way that we behave, often just subconsciously. So it's a way to access, I call them grooves when I teach my coaching clients. It's like, these are those grooves that have gotten imprinted into your psyche. And most of the time, we don't realize them until we finally pay attention. And once we do have that awareness, now we can do something about them. And now we can make changes to how we think, to how we behave. And then they no longer become subconscious. They're now part of our consciousness. And now we can make conscious choices around them as well. So these are the types of things that I think most people don't really think of when they think of yoga, but that are really powerful practices and things that we can do to empower ourselves and create, major shifts in our wellness.
Wow. I mean, as you're talking, I'm reminded of something that happened to me that I attribute to having had an ongoing yoga practice years ago. It was probably 3 or 4 years into kind of a very consistent 3 times a week yoga practice. And I wasn't going to retreats. I wasn't doing any deep study. I was just showing up in a class, 4 times a week. But something happened. I was like vacuuming my kid's room, and which is a whole other story. Like, why was I vacuuming his room? Right. But I was, and he was lying on the bed as I'm thinking of it. And I was like, oh, there's a cobweb up there. So I stepped on this tiny table, which was not meant to hold anybody's weight. And of course, as I stepped up to get the thing up into the corner to vacuum this, the thing fell. And as it was falling, I was like, my awareness was so acute. I was in the matrix. I was like, oh, I'm falling, not meant to hold my weight. Wow, I'm going to hit that with my hand. Oh, ouch, that's going to need stitches, but I don't see a tendon. And it was all happening at once. Of course, everyone's screaming around me. There's blood squirting. And I'm just like, okay, get me a towel. We're going to the ER. I was like, I felt like, Keanu Reeves in the Matrix. So I attribute all that to yoga actually in the moment, because as I was in there, I was like, oh, this is where I am during my yoga practice. Like this level of awareness of my body and presence in the moment. It was very interesting.
Yeah, that's a great example of like how what you experience and what you learn on the mat then translates off the mat, where you can take those experiences and practices of just being really present to your body and really feeling into your body, tuning into sensation, tuning into your breath and your energy, tuning into your thoughts, like what's going on in your thought process at the time of practicing on your mat. All of that easily translates to every day. And kind of what you said, just having that real awareness of where you are in space, of what you're feeling in your body, of what's going on in your mind. And that helps you, proceed in a more conscious and beneficial way. You aren't just reacting, you're then responding, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So cool. So some people have never done yoga. Some people are afraid of yoga. Some people think if I do yoga, then I'm one of those woo-woo people who does yoga, and now I have to, eat grass also in dirt. I mean, I don't know what they're thinking. But I do know I get a lot of pushback from patients or people when I suggest, well, what about yoga for that? So I wonder what you say to people about why yoga might be helpful, or what's a baby step people might take in a direction of a yoga practice of sorts.
Yeah, I've heard plenty of that myself, definitely. And I think the misconception is the connection of yoga to religion. There's absolutely, as I mentioned, a spiritual aspect to yoga. And I think sometimes because of that, people automatically connect it to religion. And that is not necessarily the case. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. And I think that is the beauty of yoga. Like I always say, yoga is one of those things that is individually unique, but universally applicable because it meets you where you are. And if you don't want to take it into some of those other places, you don't have to go there. You can still benefit from so many aspects of it and so many practices within it. And that's probably why a lot of people do come to yoga first for the physical practice, for the poses, for the movements, for that piece, because it's just so easily accessible. That's the easiest entry point. And so if that's where you want to come into it, by all means, if you feel comfortable coming into it from that as an entry point, go for it, because you are definitely going to benefit. Your physical body is going to benefit for sure. But again, because we know that everything's connected, mind, body, spirit, because we know that not only is your physical body going to be affected, but there is going to be some residual effect and positive effect into the other aspects of your being as well. So taking a gentle yoga class, if you're someone who has some physical restrictions, yoga, even the physical part of yoga, is not all sun salutations and pretzel poses and all sorts of crazy stuff like that. There is such a great variety, even in that little tip of the iceberg. Even that little tip of the iceberg has so much variety to it in terms of what you can do for yourself. And for me, yoga, even the physical practice of yoga, it's always about self-inquiry. And I think fundamentally, not just for me, fundamentally, yoga is about self-inquiry, self-discovery, self-exploration, and self-appreciation, leading eventually to self-love. Really, it all boils down in the end to self-love, but it takes a while to get there. So what's the first step? All right, let's ask questions, self-inquiry, and then from there, as we start inquiring about ourselves, and so self-inquiry means find a way to do the pose that works for your body, knowing that this pose can maybe help alleviate some back pain or some neck pain or something like that. And certainly that might require getting some proper instruction in order to learn that. But, that's where it begins. And so it doesn't have to be, what we often see in magazines and TV and all that kind of stuff. So the key is really finding kind of what is your need? What is your need? And then looking for and finding perhaps the teacher, the studio, the program that can help customize the practice to suit your needs. So that's where I usually tell most people to start, because that's what most people are ready for. Then there are some people who are actually more afraid of the physical and less afraid of, let's say, the meditation, because they just want to be able to quiet their minds, and they're really open to that. And so if that's where you're drawn, then you can certainly start with some basic meditation practices, some basic breathwork practices, things like that. So there's really a lot of entry points. It kind of depends on where the person is. And like I said, yoga is one of those things. It'll meet you where you are. And that's what's so beautiful about it.
So I agree with that, but I also am thinking about potential listeners who've never done yoga and wondering if everyone's safe to do all yoga. And I would say, you probably would say no to that. There's a stepwise approach. I usually tell people to start with yin yoga or restorative yoga if they're deconditioned, if they've never had any experience at all, and work their way up from there. And I've been to some yoga classes that definitely didn't feel safe. And so I wonder if you'd speak to how people can make those decisions about where to lean in if they're looking to explore this.
Yes, absolutely agreed. Absolutely. If you've never done it before, and what you suggested, Kristin, is a good start. Like a restorative class is a great place to start, because you're working with props and you're taught how to deal with props and how to support your body. And I will say that is one thing I feel like often, unfortunately, I hate to say it, but there are often enough teachers don't stress enough the importance of supporting the body. So there's a certain level of challenge we want to offer to the body if the body's ready to meet that challenge. But at the same time, there's also this balance of support and supporting your body in addition to challenging your body. And so for people who might already be challenged by their bodies, then definitely taking a restorative class or a very entry-level beginners class is a great idea. I actually even suggest don't just jump into a class, like actually take a lesson or two. Like learn, whether it's by going somewhere and learning from someone, the fundamentals, or an online course about fundamentals, or watching a video, like however, there's lots of different ways to do this, but get the fundamentals down. Like, if you think about, if you're serious about playing a sport, I mean, you might just kind of try to start playing it, but if you're really serious about it, like you really want to get the benefits of the sport, or you really want to do well at it, you're gonna take some lessons. Like I can go around on the tennis court and just hit the ball around, but I'm really not playing tennis. I'm really not getting the benefit of the tennis unless I take some lessons. I understand exactly how to swing that racket so I don't hurt myself. So it's the same thing. Like if you want to get some proper education around the fundamentals of it, so that you know how to work with the poses and what to do so that you can support yourself, but then also bring yourself to a place where you can gain the benefits of perhaps some strengthening or some releasing of tension in the body, or whatever it is that you're trying to get from that practice.
Yeah, I appreciate those tips. Is there anyone in your opinion who should not do yoga?
That's a great question. I think if you have major movement restrictions in your body, if you've got like I don't want to even say like a serious arthritis, because I think you can still do certain things with serious, joint issues or arthritic issues or things like that. Again, it really depends on the person. And what I would say then is you can still practice yoga, but you're not doing as much of the physical practice. You're going to now do some of the other more subtle practices that I was talking about. You're going to do breath work. You're going to do maybe some more of the mental, emotional, meditative practices, mindfulness practices. So, I mean, in a way, I would say that no, there is no one at all that could not do yoga. And the reason I say that is because it's not just about the physical practice. I go back to that, right? So even if you've got major physical issues, movement issues, and you really can't get down on the floor on a mat, it doesn't matter. There's other things you can do. You're not doing the physical practice. Now, is the physical practice for everyone? Absolutely not. The physical practice is not for everyone, because, there may be people who just, shouldn't be moving their bodies to that degree. Again, that being said, I still have taught people how to do yoga poses in bed. So you can do some very simple, basic poses in bed with very limited movement and still get some benefit from them. But it requires, again, getting that proper instruction. So I think, I hate to blanket statement that, you pretty much anyone can do it no matter what, because there might be some situations where people shouldn't. But I think with the proper instruction, you can do it to some degree where it can be a benefit to you. And if we take out just the physical practice and we talk about yoga overall as a lifestyle practice and all the other aspects of it, I would definitely say that anyone can do it. Doesn't matter what you're dealing with, who you are. There is an aspect of yoga that can be beneficial to you.
Awesome. Well, maybe that's a good jumping off point then to get into the tool you're going to share with us.
Yeah, sure. So what's awesome about the tool I was going to share with you is that this tool actually comes from the HeartMath Institute. So some of maybe people in your audience or maybe have heard of HeartMath. Have you heard of HeartMath before, Kristin?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they've been around. They've been doing research for over 30 years. And what I love about them, I think I was introduced to them maybe about 10-ish years ago. I just love how much of their research validates the ancient teachings. It's science validating the spirit, kind of, so to speak. And so a lot of the tools that they've created from their research about the power of the heart and the importance of heart-based experiences, it really falls right in alignment with so many of those yogic principles I was talking about and the yogic teachings I was talking about. And so even though what they offer isn't thought of or considered meditative or breath work like we think of in yoga with the pranayams, it's not the same. It is very similar. And there is kind of like it's very much in alignment with that. And so I have loved taking their teachings. And I did, during COVID, they offered an online mentorship program. It was called Building Personal Resilience. And it was all open to coaches and mentors and people who worked with others in wellness industry. And so I took their training course during COVID. And ever since then, I have loved bringing their practices into my wellness coaching that I do with my clients. And my wellness coaching is yogic based, like it's based in yoga, but then bringing this piece in with all the heart math tools just gives it a little more, not only, I mean, I hate to say credibility, but yeah, credibility in a lot of people's eyes, because nowadays people are looking for that scientific credibility and backing and validation. And it's very accessible too. That's another thing I love about it. So it's just about, like what I was saying about it meets you where you are, or yoga meets you where you are. These heart math tools are just so super accessible, but also still very powerful, just like so many yoga practices can be. So the technique that we're going to do, it's kind of like a two-part technique. It's called quick heart coherence. And real quick, it helps us bring our body and minds into a state of coherence. And so this state of coherence is that state where our psychology and our physiology are in alignment. So our heart, our brains, our emotions, our bodies, everything's kind of in sync, if you think of it that way. Everything falls into this kind of synchronicity. And so what the practice is, it's a breathing practice that then brings a little bit of intentionality along with it. So again, it sounds very yogic right off the bat based on that. So we can, I'll kind of guide us through it. And the first part of the practice is a heart-focused breathing, which I'll guide us through. And then there's like a second part that is what brings us into this state of heart coherence. So should I just go ahead and start? Are we ready to kind of begin that?
As long as it's safe for everyone to do and people don't need to be, sitting down or not driving, maybe just let us know who shouldn't do it at this time. They can always watch.
Oh, yes. Yes, driving. You shouldn't be doing it if you're driving. But otherwise, as long as you're in a comfortable, safe space, yeah. If you feel comfortable closing your eyes wherever you are, then you can kind of join along. Otherwise, you kind of just observe as we're doing it. So that being said, go ahead and let's kind of find that comfortable space. And you don't have to be sitting. You could be sitting, but if you prefer to be standing, that's fine too. Or if you prefer to be lying down, that's fine too. But I'll just assume I'll speak as if we're sitting. And so find that comfortable seat. And I like to begin by just doing a little bit of gentle kind of mindful guidance before we actually get into the heart math technique, just so we can get present. So I invite you to close your eyes wherever you are, unless you're driving or somewhere where you don't feel safe to do so. And once you do that, bring your awareness inward to your body. So take your awareness down to your feet and just feel your feet against the floor. Feel your legs, your thighs, your seat against your chair. And allow your lower body to settle downward. And then become aware of your upper body. Feel your spine, your back. Allow yourself to have support behind you if you have a backrest. Notice your arms, your shoulders, relaxing the arms and shoulders. And then become aware of your head and just gently balance your head over your spine between your shoulders. And then finally, give yourself a nice big smile. And as you do so, notice how the features of the face just kind of soften, relaxing the muscles of your face. Beautiful. So now that we've settled ourselves physically, now I'll invite you to bring your awareness to your heart space, to that area at the center of your chest. So as you rest your awareness there, imagine that you are breathing from your heart space. And perhaps that breath is flowing a little bit smoother, a little bit slower, a little bit deeper than normal. So find a nice, smooth, comfortable rhythm of breathing. Imagining that your breath is flowing to and from your heart space. So this is our heart-focused breathing. Holding awareness in our heart space and breathing from that heart smoothly, rhythmically. So as you continue this heart-focused breathing, I now invite you to bring to your awareness or create within you a regenerative or renewing feeling like appreciation or calm or care. And we can do this by thinking of someone or something that causes us to feel grateful, appreciative, someone or something that we care about, or even something that helps us feel calm. So as you're thinking of those things, allow yourself to really feel that feeling at your heart space, that feeling of appreciation or care or calm. And so we'll hold those two things, the heart-focused breathing, breathing from the heart space, along with that feeling of appreciation, care, calm, whatever it is for you. Let's hold that and continue doing so for several more breaths. So as we take these next few breaths, I invite you to take 3 bigger breaths. And each time you breathe out, imagine that you are sending that feeling that you've been holding on to within you, that you've been enjoying within you. I invite you to send that out to the world with each exhalation. But go ahead and take 3 nice breaths, sending out the appreciation, the care, the calm, whatever it is that you were creating within you. Send it out with those 3 breaths. And as you complete your 3rd breath, when you feel ready, you can gently open your eyes. So it was a short exercise that we did with this. And that first piece of heart-focused breathing is a very simple but powerful way to get really kind of centered, like here and now present. And so that in itself can be a really great tool, especially kind of like on the spot, like out and about in your day. If you feel yourself getting a little bit stressed, caught up in something, ruminating, whatever, right? Not present. Coming to that heart focused breathing can be really powerful. And it's something, even though we did it with our eyes closed, it's something you can actually do with your eyes open. So that first piece is in itself, I think, a really powerful tool just to get centered. And then that second part where we added the renewing feeling, the regenerative feeling, that is the piece, that's the part that helps bring us into coherence. That's the part that as we get more and more skilled at holding the vibration, the energy of that kind of renewing feeling, that affirming feeling, that really takes us into that state of coherence where our mind and body are very aligned, and it helps create greater resiliency. It helps just even with just our functioning, our mind-body functioning. In fact, some of the research the heart math people have done are with groups and teams, and they have them do the heart coherence practice regularly before they go into their meetings. And they find they've measured the performance is so much better when they've done the coherence, the quick heart coherence practice before each meeting versus when not. So there really is something to that optimal functioning of our body mind from doing this practice regularly. So that two-part practice, again, can be really powerful when done in its whole as the quick heart coherence technique. But that first part can be done on its own too, if we need, again, that just quick centering, something to just bring us into the moment.
Beautiful. What a helpful and simple tool. I'm really grateful that you shared it here. As I was doing it, I was challenged in the same way that I am always challenged on my yoga mat, which is to say, paying attention to three things at once, part of which is your body, part of which is your breathing, part of which is your monkey mind flitting from limb to limb of your proverbial tree and sort of gently guiding it back to the moment. That challenge to me is yoga and is the flexing of that muscle of presence. And so it is something you could do lying in a bed without having to move at all and just getting all the benefits. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for making those points, because absolutely, I appreciate that. And you're welcome.
Well, do you have anything else that you would like to say to a community of listeners who might be struggling with their own spiritual 2x4 and working on their own shift that you haven't yet said?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say just be really gentle and kind to yourself. I think we forget about that. I know from my own personal journey and my own personal experience, I would get impatient with myself, and I would forget to just be kind and gentle and loving to myself. And when I finally would do that, that's when I would make progress, and so I think it takes baby steps. And as long as you're making the effort and you're committed and you're taking those baby steps, whatever they are for you, then, if you combine that again with that gentleness towards yourself, that appreciation towards yourself as you're going through your process, I think it will serve you very well, and you'll actually see greater progress in whatever it is you're trying to achieve, in your wellness journey.
Beautiful, subtle but profound. If somebody hearing this wanted to work with you or take a next step in the direction of any of the things that you've shared, what would be the next best way for them to do that?
Sure. So I have a website, which is solunasolutions.com. And so there's a contact page. You can get a hold of me through that contact page. You can email me directly. Sheetal@solunasolutions.com is my email address. I'm on Facebook as Sheetal Contractor. And I have a YouTube channel called Empowered Wellness with Sheetal. So you can check out my videos and comment there or get a hold of me through my videos that way as well. And I work out of West End Yoga, which is in the west end of Allentown. And that's where I see a lot of my clients for either bodywork or coaching. So you can find me at that physical location if you're familiar with West End Yoga. And I also do online work. So if you're not in the area, you can always reach out and we can do some work online as well.
Cool. And there might be a book.
Oh yes, there is a book. Thank you for reminding me. I'm in the midst of writing a full-length book, which hopefully will be done in September. But I wrote a book called Explore Your Chakras, and it's kind of a beginner's guide to learning about the subtle body that I was speaking of, specifically the energetic body in terms of the chakra system, the 7 chakra system. So there's some journaling in there, there's some affirmations, there's some meditation. So that's a nice little pocket reference, if you're looking for ways to work with your energy and get to know yourself better on that subtle level. And
Awesome.
You can find that at Amazon. And there's a link to it from my website, but then it's also available on Amazon as well. But going to my website, probably the easiest way.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sheetal. Thank you for all of this. This has been such a delight to spend the hour with you. I'm so grateful, Sheetal, for you sharing your knowledge with us and just being in my world. I feel just so delighted to have you as part of my tribe.
Oh, thank you very much, Kristin. I'm so appreciative as well. I'm so happy to be here and share with your audience, your community. And I wish everybody well and luck on their journey.
Great.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Healing Grove podcast. If you liked it, please be sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to deepen your experience further, consider grabbing a copy of the Healing Grove Playbook. With journal prompts for this podcast and 41 others, it's the perfect place to record your learnings, keep track of the tools you explore, and reflect on your own experience. Finally, it's important to mention that even though I am a doctor, nothing you hear on this podcast, whether from myself or my guests, constitutes medical advice. Any intervention you try should always be discussed with and supervised by a trusted member of your own healing team. Thanks for listening, and see you next time in the Healing Grove.